province. The CHR also appeals to the public to stop vilifying the child of the police officer who also appeared in the viral video. Human Rights Commissioner Gomez-Dumpit joins us today for more on this. Good morning, Commissioner, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Morning, Christian.
Okay, first I'd like you to respond to this narrative or description coming from the Philippine National Police that the case involving Jonel Nuesca was an isolated one and should not be reflective of the entire, let's say, culture within the Philippine National Police as an institution. Do you think that is indeed the case? This is isolated?
Well, first of all, we share the outrage and condemn all killings, and we have done that in the past. And but beyond condemnation, there must be reflection by the Philippine National Police. And to say that this is an isolated case, or to say that this is not the culture in the PNP, they have to take a closer look at their practices, including the language that they use to enable these kinds of behavior from happening, to enable the language that is used to enable these behaviors to happen. This is the case also here because it's not really an isolated case. If you take a look at the language, if you take a look at the applause that comes after each and every killing, and we're not just talking about this case. There have been many in the past, but we can use this as a test case to ask ourselves, to ask the institution, how did it come to this? When we know that there were many cases before and he has escaped or he has done it with impunity, and if you take a look at the most recent ones, it was, I think, May and December, there were homicide cases and it was dismissed for lack of substantial evidence. But that really needs to be reevaluated.
And why do you think this has come to this? Because we know the justification or the reasoning coming from the Philippine National Police. And earlier we were talking with Brigadier General Osana. He said that this single incident, this isolated one, did not lead to a change in the Philippine National Police because according to him, this was an isolated case. But the CHR has long been engaging with the Philippine National Police in terms of reforming or respecting human rights coming from the police officers. Have you actually seen changes? And what do you think should be done in concrete terms to actually prevent people like Mr. Nuesca from wreaking havoc or killing people in cold blood?
Well, of course, well, first and foremost, they haven't been cooperating with us recently, and we all know that. Whenever there is a death following a police operation, they would not share information. When there are vigilante killings, as we call it, the investigation has not been forthcoming, and we understand the difficulty in that. Cooperation is really a signal. The non-cooperation is always a signal that they're not really open to engage and show and demonstrate that they are trying to respond to the situation properly. We've also said this in the past, that there must be a proper orientation or reorientation of police officers who err. And there has to be a public report on that. Because they have to show their openness to these kinds of comments so that they can show the public that they are also reliable. Okay. And just to say that I caught a bit part of what General Brandy was saying, that they laid their lives down and there were many injuries also. But this is not a zero-sum game. We should take a look at each and every case and acknowledge where we went wrong or acknowledge where the system went wrong and make a correction of that.
But I think it was just parroting the statement or justification coming from the President himself, President Rodrigo Duterte. That was quite consistent, don't you think?
Yes, of course, but you have to follow your superiors. That's why we were saying language, words are important. Diba? Okay. When you address culture, it's not only just the practice that we've seen. in the past, but it's also the language that enables that. In fact, the High Commissioner was saying in her report on the human rights situation of the Philippines that, language matters because utterances may be construed as an order. And if it comes from the highest authority, then clearly any word that you utter will be taken as a serious matter or will be taken by the lower ranking or the subordinates as something that is quite serious. No, you cannot just pick and choose what the president says and say this is a joke, this was done in levity, and this one is really a serious order. That was done in press briefings. It was uttered in news conferences, in many public platforms. No, so start with the language so that everybody will follow suit.
Yeah, I think that can work within the Philippine National Police itself, but can they actually tell the president to be careful with his language? I don't think that would be possible if you're the Philippine National Police, which is actually related to the next point that I would like to make, or the next question. For instance, you mentioned reorientation. One senator was suggesting a top-to-bottom values formation within the Philippine National Police. But how far efforts like this can actually go if the president himself has been giving those kinds of statements to the Philippine National Police?
Well, that's why we've been saying all along, the easiest thing to do is change your ways, change your language. Make it positive, make it the substance of the language should be to preserve human lives. It should be respectful of human rights. So that's the start. And that's the easiest thing to do, to stop that kind of habit, to stop words that incite hatred, words that incite violence, because that's the one that enables the law enforcement agencies to commit these kinds of acts.
And I think other alarming, a similarly alarming statement related to this was that made on social media. Of course, we have to check the accuracy of this, but this was also attributed to a police captain, basically justifying what Mr. Nuesca did to his two neighbors. Basically, sabi daw, mahirap kalaban ng pagtitimpi at pagpapasensya. Kumbaga, dapat daw kasi narespeto yung police officer. I mean, this is an opportunity for the CHR, for instance, to educate the public, and in particular, the Philippine National Police, and why they have to respect human rights, given the fact that they are security officers, they were authorized to carry firearms, and why they should not be trigger happy, even in the face of such insults.
Well, it's easy to point the fingers at people, no, at others. And that, again, is a language that condones the acts or justifies it. No, they have to just see what happened and act accordingly. But this is not the only case that they have to look at. There are many others that exhibited that kind of behavior. No, even brandishing firearms, for instance, and the siga culture, no, or the siga attitude. I've said this before, and ang pulis kasi sinusumbungan yan, hindi yan ang sinusumbong, di ba? Yeah. And that culture of fear also, people will follow not just because they are fearful, but because they actually get to realize that they can respect that kind of they respect the law enforcement authorities because they are very reliable, not because they're scary.
Okay.
And then this is the thing that we have to instill in our police officers. There have been projects in the past, many years ago, community-based policing, human rights-based approach to law enforcement. All these things have been there. But to be able to instill it and to be able to ensure that the proper training is had so that this can be exhibited in the actions of the Philippine National Police is something that's really a challenge, but okay, it has to start somewhere.
Okay, finally, Commissioner Dumpit, President Duterte condemned the killing of the two neighbors by this police officer. But do you think, given the prevailing culture of impunity, especially under his watch, do you think the president can actually wash his hands off this incident? Isolated it might have been, according to the PNP?
Well, there has to be proper action. But again, it's not only this killing. They have to reevaluate everything, where they went wrong, and report to the public why the cases have been dismissed. No? And then it's really a system. No? And we've said this before. The Internal Affairs Service, the officers themselves have been asking for operational independence from the Philippine National Police. So that's a start. Let's take a look at the mechanisms that ensure that the cases filed against police officers are actually working and produce results.
Okay, Commissioner Dumpit, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
News